Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, good night, wherever you are. Good evening, rather. Uh, I think we are back, or I'm back, right, after quite a few years. I've been thinking of doing market reviews for quite some time now. Finally gotten today also being a holiday, Mahashivratri. So greetings to everyone in India, at least. And of course, a lot has happened, both at a personal end and in the market since the last India market review or the global market review I've done. That's a separate conversation, of course, and I'd be happy to engage with anybody who wants to connect back and just have coffee. So without further ado, let's get into today's global market review. Hopefully, inshallah, probably have many more of these going forward, time permitting, etc. And perhaps we'll also do, quite specific market reviews, not just global ones, crypto, something that has taken up my interest a second time, this time far more keenly. So looking at doing something in that space quite actively and seriously. So if anyone is interested, do touch base. And especially if anybody is doing something already, I would definitely like to know and catch up with what's been happening, especially with Web3 and DAOs and NFTs and stuff like that. Fascinating how much the world is changing. In case you did not attend the Web3 webinar that I did, please go to Bangalore Investors Club on YouTube. It's a public session. We had a great time. It was supposed to be for 2 hours, went on for 4 hours. I was blown away by what I learned and figured out in the time that I took to investigate and do a deep dive into the Web3 space. So definitely going forward, I'm personally going to be looking at that actively, and I'm looking to engage with others who are like-minded and who are also active in that space. So that's just a introduction, invitation. So other than crypto, definitely been looking a lot at global markets now. And that's why this webinar, actually, the global market review, to start seriously tracking global market on a very, very regular basis to find opportunities there with the view of actually, trading, investing in the global markets wherever the situation and the opportunities may arise. Now, the case as we are speaking, the Ukraine-Russian conflict is going on, and in the last 2 days, the Russian ruble has tanked over 20-30%. Now, if you were a global trader, then that was a wonderful opportunity, or is a wonderful opportunity rather, right? I'm not just sure whether is the ruble. I'm not even sure whether the ruble is there. Okay. Yes, it should be there, of course. So there you go. This is just, of course, the inverse. The ruble to the USD INR. So just before the conflict, or for many, many months, it was around 75 rubles or 75 rubles to $1. And now for $1, you get 102 rubles. So massive depreciation of the currency. And for others who perhaps prefer to look at it another way, let me see if I can. Yep, it should be there. RUB, USD. Yeah, that's the other way to look at it, the other way around, right? So 1 ruble was getting you $0.01, and now you're getting $0.09. It's just the inverse chart, right? Anyhow, the point being that this massive 20, 30, 40% depreciation of the Russian ruble is an opportunity for those who feel that Russia is going to bounce back. And if you feel that that's possible, then if one can figure out a way to do this, I'm not exactly sure how and where, but I'm sure there is an opportunity. I mean, the ruble will appreciate. It's just a matter of time, right? So, and then you just get more dollars. So anyhow, that's just in the passing that I sort of mentioned this, that such opportunities which are, worldwide are amazing. And of course, another thing to perhaps mention with the breakout of the conflict is how natural gas just shot up overnight by almost 10%. At one point cool down and still doing a nice uptrend which may or may not last, and if the talks just completely um, sort of come to a peaceful end, we could see a quite sharp reversal. But at this point, nothing in the chart indicates that crude oil is cooling off. While very interestingly, gold spiked but really has not gone anywhere. This is quite unusual for gold. For those of us who've tracked gold for a long time, gold is just not moving now. I mean, it's not reacting to a conflict, and you have to legitimately wonder what's going up with gold. Has gold changed? Is gold something else now? It does not really move in spite of it. This is a very significant geopolitical conflict that we have, but gold has not moved. And are there some more fundamental reasons why this has happened? Is it because of crypto having taken over the world? Okay, that's too strong to put it. Has become an alternative as a hedge, which a lot of crypto enthusiasts do talk about. And if that is the case, then is gold losing, or at least has a slightly diminished value as a store, which it has been for many, many centuries? And if that is the case, and of course we'll never really know that very quickly, then that is really a historical moment that we are sort of being a part of. And I'm not sure how many of us are aware of it, that gold may or may not be a store of value for the future, as it has been for many centuries. And if that's the case, then I would think, and I'm sure many of you would agree, that this is something very, very fundamental that is shifting as we speak, right? And it's very fascinating to see how this not only changes investing and trading markets, but how it changes the nature of money, geopolitics, store of value, etc., etc. Anyhow, I have actually, well, I would say as usual, digressed. The point was to just start off with a few brief comments on the global market review itself. The idea is to do, of course, equity markets. We will look at the routine commodities, global commodities. I'm talking about energy, gold, bullion, and also start looking at the crypto markets during the GMR, but I plan to do crypto specific market reviews in the future. And as and when we find specific opportunities in GMR, I plan to do specific sessions on those opportunities worldwide. In today's GMR, I'm not looking at specifics like Freon gas, which has shot up a lot, the impact on wheat prices, and certain other raw material prices, which Russia and Ukraine are big exporters of, right? But those will keep happening. And once we have the data, and luckily there is a lot more data available nowadays, freely available than there was before, we'll start looking at that. Now, this may or may not be relevant for some of you or many of you, so it's really up to you on how you want to use it. None of this is, of course, investment or trading advice. It's up to you to make what you want with it. But like I have been stating many times earlier in the years that I've done the India market reviews, these have really fundamentally shaped my worldview and my understanding of what's happening in the world. Not only finding opportunities, but actually understanding where the world is going. Like they say, follow the money and you'll sniff the agendas that are at play, right? So without further ado, on talking about GMR, which I'm not going to do today, but I will address that in a future session, is the spike in inflation across the world, some very fascinating charts as to what might be happening with multi-decade inflation trends. And because if this trend has actually changed or reversed, then we have perhaps multi-year, multi-decade significant financial consequences of this. And it'll be really interesting to see how that pans out. And everybody's finances, personal finances, will be affected by these sort of change in trends. So as usual, I've been a very strong proponent of financial education, personal financial education, not just knowing what's a fixed deposit and how to buy stocks. That's pretty superficial and passé now. I think a much deeper literacy, competent literacy is required if we're going to navigate our way through the quite eventful years ahead. And my sense is we could have far more eventful years than we have seen so far. Right. All right. So with that, and not wanting to make this unnecessarily long and a ramble, let's start looking at the global markets. And we'll start with the equity markets. What you should see on your screen is the TradingView chart terminal. I think many of you and many people would be quite familiar with it by now. It has become, I think, the de facto standard across the world for any serious chartist. Not the cheapest of subscriptions, but having said that, amazing what these guys have done in terms of the data they provide, the tools that they provide, and the level of sophistication and usability that this has. So by the way, any of you who are listening, if you are looking at doing something more code-oriented, algorithmic-oriented in the markets, global markets and local India markets, and are looking to do something with the code, and if you have coding skills, please get in touch. My level of interest in that has gone up by multifold due to things like TradingView and availability of various data points which were not available earlier. So looking to do something and collaborate on that. So again, if you are a coder or you're interested in dabbling in coding and would like to participate in that, not only you want to really apply your skills to the markets, then I'm happy to get a call from you. All right. Okay, talking about a call. That's really unfortunate. I should have done this here. Let me put that 934196757. Right. All right. So there you have it. If anybody needs to get in touch, India number, India timings, please. Just WhatsApp or something. I prefer Signal, by the way. If that's my preferred mode of my preferred platform. So just signal me on this number and would be happy to get in touch, right? All right. So with that, the charts. So let's start with, the SPX and the S&P 500 index. And we'll just see what's happening in the US markets. Now, what you see on the screen is a template that I am comfortable with for myself right now. Of course, you can create any number of templates that one likes. So the big chart that you see here on the right is the daily chart. On the bottom left is the weekly chart. And on the top left is the monthly chart of whichever security or symbol that I am looking at. And of course, you have the RSI and the MACDs, right? So for the purposes of the GMR, IMR, crypto MR, and commodities MR, or anything, perhaps even the Forex MR, then this will probably be the standard template, which I will tweak. There are other things that I use, but they will not be discussed during the market review sessions. All right. So let's do a top down of the S&P 500 index, right? From, let's say, let's do the yearly review very quickly. So we had the COVID crash 2020, becoming a distant memory for a lot of people. And this was the 2008 crash. Some of us don't even know what we're talking about. Some of you are so young. about it. And we recovered, and we've clearly, topped out there, and we've been doing some sort of a top dance there. Now, please remember that this is a monthly chart. So this takes a month for the new candle to happen. And what you are definitely seeing here, right at the crosshair that you should be able to see, was a slight bearish divergence, which was there on the monthly chart, which of course has now is not relevant simply because the market has turned down. So there was this bearish divergence then, and the market panned out. And in my personal opinion, this has still a way to go. This high and this high, and the S&P index could look at lower levels for before it sort of calms down and settles down for a sideways or a further uptrend. So in the coming next, probably quite a few to many weeks, I'm not expecting this to recover very rapidly until and unless events are always something to be vary about, both positively and negatively. So something which I really can't imagine right now. I mean, okay, fine, if the Ukraine-Russia thing stops, even if the sanctions are lifted and all, I'm not sure that the world order goes back to how it was. I think there are many things in the world order which have fundamentally changed with the invasion of Russia, and the Russian border quite by de facto becoming closer to the NATO border. Fascinating developments that are going on. And I don't think the geopolitics of Europe, or for that matter, NATO and US, are ever going to go back to the pre-invasion era, right? So because of that, I'm not so sure that the market will just, keep rambling up. Yes, the one scenario, which again looks a little unlikely right now, is that the US Fed was probably going to tighten interest rates, may not because of the economic impact of the conflict. And if they don't, and they, let's say, step up on the quantitative easing or just the ridiculous printing of money, then there is some scope for the markets to just keep rallying, basically on just printed money, not on any fundamental improvements of the situation. Right. So I maybe just looking out for the Fed, but like I said, unlikely. So I'm not able to really visualize any practical near-term scenario which would that would make the market fundamentally go up. So more pain expected, in my opinion. RSI also being quite overbought. Okay. On the monthly chart, please remember that. And coming to the daily chart of the S&P 500, well, it's done a nice seems to have done a sort of hammer formation. It has broken the 50-day moving average and coming close to the 100. Looks like it may have for now paused on the fall, or for those of us who are Elliott wave practitioners, this could just be a wave 2 of a larger fall that could happen, which could take the index all the way from what the current 4373 to even who knows, the 200-day moving average, which is 3500, which is actually quite a bit. It's almost 1,000 points. It's almost 25% cut on the S&P 500, which I don't think can be ruled out. If the Russian conflict just goes to another level, if actual physical war breaks out between Russia and NATO, then we are talking about a whole different game here. As you already know, that the Russian government, Putin, put the nuclear weapons in Russia on a special alert, apparently the highest category of alert that exists in Russia. Now, I don't know whether that's just, obviously nobody knows whether that's just posturing or actually done. And who knows, you and I, the common man, are the last people to have any clue about what is going on. And you could just be woken up one day knowing that some nuclear blast happened. It could be in a remote place and no real economic or human damage happened from that. But that fact that it exploded and something was done would send shivers and jitters down the global financial markets and much else, right? So when people power corrupts and when people get desperate or egoistic and want to prove a point, you can never really say what could or could not happen. So for now, US S&P settled down from about 1400, 4800 to 4300. So that's almost about 10% cut, right? But a lot more is quite possible. We definitely have a lower top, lower bottom formation on the S&P 500. And therefore, the uptrend for sure is broken. There's no doubt about that. The uptrend for sure is broken. We have lower top, lower down, lower bottom. So we do have at least a short-term downtrend in place. And in some ways, we are at probably at a pretty critical level at the 50-day moving average, exponential moving average, and other things. Just sort of dancing around that, and it'll be time to see what. Only time will tell what is going to happen. In my view, I would not be in a hurry at all to put in new funds and be in a hurry to say, okay, let's find opportunities. I'm talking about the macro level, not at any specific individual stocks. And especially if this low is broken of 4116, then definitely a further crack is possible. And even from from where it is right now, it's almost a 3% fall from where the market is right now to that low of the hammer. So US definitely not looking cheerful or bullish at all. And more or less the same thing for the Dow Jones and the other indices. Now in the Dow Jones, I didn't notice this so much in the S&P. Yeah, I didn't notice this so much in the S&P, but in the Dow Jones, it is far more. This is the NASDAQ, of course. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right, so this is the weekly chart of the Dow Jones, right? And see what we have here. Okay. So those of you who are well versed with technical analysis would perhaps instantly recognize this. This is something, not something, it is actually a rounding top, right? Which has taken a good 1 year to happen. So April 21, we are almost another month and we are into April. So April to April, 11 months or March. And this is a clear rounding top, which has been broken, got tested on the 100-day weekly, not daily, weekly moving average, has come back to its neckline. And it would be interesting to see now what happens from this point, right? So has it broken down? Is this a false breakdown? Will it come back up? Interesting at a very critical juncture at the neckline, right, of this of the Dow Jones. And same thing that appears here on the daily chart. You can tweak it depending on your mood and all. You may want to adjust this up or down. I think that's the best fit line that we have there. So at a very, very critical juncture where the Dow Jones is. Of course, the S&P has 500 stocks. The Dow Jones has 30 stocks. And this would really, I think, technically speaking, we are at that very, very critical juncture as to what may happen. On the NASDAQ, something similar has actually broken down already, right? On the NASDAQ, something similar, which would be from here, but it is from June, okay? This, I mean, taking the levels that are there on the chart, this has clearly broken down. You can make an argument or a case for another level, which I will draw in a moment. So that is, from here, from this top, and say, okay, maybe we have, maybe we don't have, but TA does allow for multiple necklines to be there, and till the the most aggressive or the most conservative, in this case, this neckline is broken, which it has. Again, this has broken. It has gone to the 100-day moving average, come back, bounced, and we are really sticking there. Again, the downtrend here is definitely there. Lower tops and lower bottoms are very, very much in place. And like I said, we are at a very critical juncture at technically speaking on this chart. So NASDAQ, Dow Jones, and the S&P, the Russell 2000 perhaps is the best example of a long consolidation which has finally broken down. This you cannot argue with, right? There is no debate here that the Russell 2000. So Russell 2000 is a very broad market index, 2000 stocks, which, the non-tech, the non-IT, the non-top dogs, the non-FANG stocks are all here. And that decisively broke down. And, this really looks like a downtrend flag to me. So if this is what it did from 2460 to almost to keep 1960, so that's 500 points, right? 500 points looks like a downtrend flag. And if this is going to break down, if the flag is going to break down, then let's see what we have. Yeah, right. If that flag is going to break down and say another 500 points from here, just say 2000, we're talking about, 1,500, 1,500 is all the way. Yeah, right. So let me actually put a mark there, and who knows, 1500. Oops, this is different. Coordinates 1500. And we want that. Okay. All right. So could this come to 1500? Well, never say never. That's the mantra of the market. Never say never, right? So yes, we could see 1500, I think, in the markets. A lot of people are hoping that will not happen, obviously. Oops, what did I want? Sorry. Yeah. But, this 1500, 500 point fall, why not another 500 point fall, right? It could very well happen. So somewhere around 1600, 1700 is something that we could see. And remember, this whole thing started before the conflict actually happened, right? So the fall actually happened way before anybody had any clue that Russia could invade. And like I keep saying, and I've kept saying in my classes, in my courses, in my webinars and all, the market has already decided what it wants to do. It is just looking for an excuse to do something that it already has decided what to do. So it's not like the Russia-Ukraine conflict caused the fall. The fall had already been decided by the market. It wanted to go down. It wants to go down. It looks like that. And then it's just looking for an excuse to fall so that people can say, oh, because of that. No, there's no because. It is correlated. There is no because, right? Something that we discuss very deeply and intensively in our courses and classes, right? Yeah, so in case you're wondering why I'm talking about all this, yeah, after almost 5 years, I think, thinking of maybe starting classes and courses again. Not yet decided, but yeah. So again, if anybody is interested, touch base. So 500 point fall, that would be quite significant. And the lesson to note from this, if we just go back, is, look at the S&P 500, right? During the same time period, looks like it was trending up. It was trending up, right? You look at the NASDAQ, right? And this is the weekly chart, okay? This was trending up. Only now it seems to have gone, it has gone down. But the Russell 2000 had been going sideways all this time for almost a year before it now broke down. So the value of tracking multiple indices, broad market indices, and not getting too fixated on only one. Yes, unless you are a very astute trader and you are just trading maybe that particular index or something, and that's perhaps a different ball game. But these sort of divergences between indices can give you very good early warning signs as to what is likely in store for the future. So on the Russell 2000, like I said, downtrend flag, looks like it could go down further, and time will tell. I think there's a 80-90% chance that this fall is perhaps still going to happen. Remember, this took November, December, January, Feb, March, not March, November, December, January, for 4 months. So we're talking about this to here is 4 full months. Looks like a long time nowadays, but by June, July, who knows? We could be at 1500, and who knows what else is in store, right? All right. So there we have the downtrend flag very, very clearly marked in the daily chart. So very quickly, just to go through the rest of the world, we'll start with DAX, the most prominent equity index in Europe. Right now, in this, quite interesting. I think what caught my attention in the DAX particularly is the daily market. And let's see, I think, especially those of you, a chart pattern here, which is not very often seen or discussed, here is the chart pattern, right? So this is what is called a inverted triangle, or also called a megaphone in McGee's book, right? The Bible, oops. The Bible of no theory, at least, right? Edward McGee. Yeah, even if I take that, let it break down. Yes. So this is a sort of inverted, not sort of, this is an inverted triangle with a broadening. It's also a broadening pattern in Elliott wave, right? And usually ends badly in the sense of just falls. And you can also see that it fell on good volumes, right? So fell on really increasing volumes. So there has been a definitive sell-off as far as the DAX is concerned. And please remember that DAX represents the most important economy in Europe, which is Germany, right? So it took support at a previous high, the pre-COVID high, right? Do you see that? Just took support at a pre-COVID high and has bounced from there, but not looking, again, Germany is the one which is perhaps economically the most affected. The amount of gas and raw materials it gets from Russia, it's hugely dependent on that. And it's very interesting if you go to Deutsche Welle, which is the German, I don't know if it's a public service, a German national broadcaster. Watch their English channel if you don't know German. It's very fascinating to see how many German top politicians believed that Russia would not and never invade Ukraine. It was just inconceivable to them. And quite a few very prominent ones have publicly said that they've been wrong and that they've made a U-turn in how they view the relationships with Russia should go in the future. So till now, as until last week, the German media, the German population, the German political elite, etc., were like, it's okay, let's be friendly with Russia. They're important to us. And we can perhaps convince Putin with economic logic to not do this and not do that. And he needs our euros and dollars. He's dependent on us economically, etc., etc. Well, that theory just completely, has broken, and their sort of unrealistic, well, obviously easy to say unrealistic now, unrealistic worldview or assessment of Putin has completely collapsed, and they are quite literally struggling. You can see that in the communication and in the public posturing of how to reframe this whole issue and Putin for the future of Germany itself and German economic security and German physical security. And there's already talk about the second Iron Curtain coming up in Europe, right? Very fascinating topic, maybe a separate session on that, about what a second Iron Curtain would be and what it could mean for the future of Europe and indeed the rest of the world, right? So are we going back to a sort of Cold War era? And yeah, India is sort of, stuck in the middle, and they have been making very ambivalent noises at the United Nations, abstaining from various votes, afraid to piss off America on one side and afraid to piss off Russia on the other side. And of course, there are many countries like that. China has its own agendas, of course, and many small, big countries, saying like, "Hello, we don't know what we want to do." Of course, everybody's taking care of their own interests here, right? And yeah, I'm sorry, I digress again, but a fascinating shift in multi-decade assumptions of how things would pan out in Europe and rest of the world. So there's massive work going on in the background as to how to reframe the future for Europe, Russia, NATO, US, and that has implications well for the rest of us, right? Definitely for India. All right, we perhaps will be forced to sort of make a choice, whether we like it or not, whether we are tilting towards the Western alliance or the Russian alliance or Russia. Of course, we don't want to tilt towards China, but then what do we do with Russia? I think India finds itself in a pretty difficult spot. In the long term, it seems that, you just go with America and NATO and the Western side, but given what's at stake, it's not obviously such a easy decision to make. So I really envy, or rather really would not want to be in the shoes of anybody who has to make these decisions and navigate these very, very, very interesting and very, very complicated scenarios that are there, right? Okay. Why did this become? Yes, this was supposed to be daily. I'm sorry, that became weekly. Yeah, so you can see that, this, the DAX had this inverted triangle since March or April last year, again 1 year. So you had 1 year of warning, both on the Russell 2000, remember, and on the DAX that this is going on. Then we look at the CAC 500. Okay, let's just perhaps not waste too much time on this. The rest of Europe will just follow suit. There's really not much else. If you've covered DAX, then that's basically the end of it. What is interesting and relevant is perhaps this a bit of a no, I was going to say a bit of like fitting the line, but it's not really fitting the line, right? So a head and shoulder, very clearly multiple left heads, right? And multiple left shoulders, one here, one here. Okay, let me just make it bigger, just in case anybody's new. So it'll be easy for them. Right. Right. So this is your one left shoulder, another left shoulder, one massive head, the right shoulder, which itself looks like a smaller head and shoulder, right? And it's broken down, bounced back, but let's look at the measuring implication, which has not yet been met. So this is like 7,380 to, where are we? Yeah, 7,780, let's say, okay? So 600 points. So 600 points from here makes it 6,100, 6,200, right? 6,100, 6,200. Why did I put that blue line there? It'll be there you see, right? We're talking about the previous COVID high. So our markets coming back to the previous COVID high. Is that there? Right? Looks like that. There's increasing evidence that we are seeing now. Russell, the downtrend flag, the CAC, the DAX and all, you look at the measurements and all, looks like we could perhaps be going to the pre-COVID life highs, old life highs, and that's another 5 to 8 to 10% down, depending on which market or which index you are in. So don't be fooled by these green candles. They're just bounces. And in the case of CAC, it has broken the 200-day moving average quite decisively, and just a bounce, and looks like we're going to head perhaps lower, right? All right, so this is interesting. So most indices don't have volume, but for DAX there is. So good. And even though there is volume buying here, look at the weekly chart here, and it's not looking that good at all. All right, this is the FTSE, and well, really nothing much to say. Similar top patterns which are breaking down. topping patterns. All right. And FTSE is quite a distance away from its 2018 high. And this could be a very significant double top for the FTSE, which it will be hard to recover from for perhaps some time. But we'll see. This is actually not the index itself. This is oh yeah, sorry. I thought this was okay. Okay, let's drop the euro. Okay, in the interest of time, not looking at Canada. Nikkei, okay. Japan, well, so the Japanese story is a fascinating one. If you take all the charts, the entire data that you can get, then all the way from 1989, this is one often report. I've tried to make a point for this as much as I can. Japan's peak index was in 1989, and we are still about 30% away from that. It never recovered. So imagine that's like, at least 1 or 2 generations perhaps who have sort of seen their wealth completely diminish. So really nothing great, probably going back to this, peak or pre-COVID high as far as Japan is concerned. So really just tracking the rest of the world. With the most significant point there being that their lifetime high is God knows how far away. Hang Seng, well, with all the Chinese influence that is there in Hong Kong right now, right? A lot of people are quite skeptical about what all is yet to happen. I mean, quite literally cracking down left, right, and center in subtle and obvious ways. Very sad to see, for example, a very prominent editor of once upon a time editor of a Hong Kong newspaper, very, pro, I wouldn't say pro West, or I would say pro freedom, pro democracy, pro liberal values, is now a food delivery boy in his 60s and 70s. He's just been stripped of his power and money and things like that. Anyhow, so Hong Kong, Hang Seng, definitely going down and probably going. This is a clear downtrend. Even the moving averages have trended down, unlike rest of the world. And these turned down way before Putin did anything and all that. So they turned down when? Wow, in July of last year. So the political impact of that being felt there quite strongly. So this really broke down in April last year. Yep. April, July last year, the Hang Seng broke down and continues to be on a downtrend. There maybe, okay, like first of all, on the Hang Seng, what's interesting is from its peak of about 30. Yeah. About 33,000, it's come down to 22,000. That's 30% loss, right? The Hang Seng has. And it is maybe, all right? I'm saying this with a lot of circumspection, that maybe the Hang Seng has sort of is in the process of bottoming out, right? Just maybe. If the global markets crack, so again, which factor affects which index is definitely a big debate. As far as the Hong Kong or the Chinese stock markets are concerned, then I think you have to look at China factors a lot. As far as Europe and American, then you have to look at Russia, Ukraine thing at this point. India is probably a mix between the West and local factors. China right now, it's the government which is in total, domination control. They have taken away a lot of abilities for companies to do whatever they like, and it's like becoming, I don't know, for those of us who are familiar, like the good old license Raj that we had in India. And having said that, once that system stabilizes and then economic growth does come back, then obviously it will do well. So in terms of a fall, the Hang Seng has outperformed tremendously, maybe 3x or more, or 4x compared to Western indices. But there is evidence, I would say, on the charts that things could be settling down, and at maybe current levels on the Hang Seng and around 20,000, I would perhaps start looking for opportunities to invest in the Hang Seng index or Hang Seng stocks, which is possible if you have a global trading platform or access. So this could be actually be turning out to be a place to find some excellent long-term opportunities for global investors or Hong Kong stock investors, right? So yeah, so we've already now found one major market, the Hang Seng market, where I think opportunities are available and possible. Having said that, I would, well, not, okay. This is always, you never know what the best situation of the time is. If the Russia-Ukraine thing aggravates, I'm sure Hong Kong will also perhaps go down a bit, but most likely, in my view, Hong Kong from where it is now will not fall as much as, let's say, US or European indices fall. The fall in the Hong Kong exchange in the index Hang Seng could be maybe just 50% or less of what those global. So you remember the Russell 2000, we were talking about another 5-10% fall. This may fall another 2.5-3%. And then maybe final, in quotes, final bottom has been put in place. But yeah, this is definitely looking promising. So if you're a longer term, multi-month, multi-year type investor, I think the Hong Kong index, Hang Seng index and its constituents are looking promising now. I wouldn't say they are bargain, but they're definitely a promise there. Right. Or just trade the Hang Seng ETF, just buy the ETF and put your money in it and well, just leave it there. This is the Australian index. The Australian index actually came back and hit the pre-COVID highs. This blue line here, it hit the pre-COVID highs, took support and has gone up, right? And with Australia now having relaxed its border controls, and I'm seeing more and more Australia tourism ads now, right? So if tourism, of course, it's not, tourism is significant, but not huge as in commodities in Australia. If that revives, then there's some scope for, I think, the hospitality side in Australia to improve. But watch this neckline again, double top or a more complicated rounding top or a double top or sorry, a modified head and shoulder, whichever what you prefer to say, has broken down. And as a matter of fact, I would say has even met its measuring implication from 7,600 to 7,200, 400 points, another 400 points here, 6,800, went all the way there and has bounced back. So as far as this fall is concerned, it hit the measuring implication, became quite massively oversold on the daily chart, not on the weekly or monthly, and has recovered. Now, possible that with Australia opening up, and okay, so Australia is a direct beneficiary of the Russia-Ukraine crisis because some of the commodities, not all, some of the commodities that Russia and Ukraine export to the West, Australia has, right? Metals and wheat particularly. So if that demand shifts now to sourcing from Australia, then Australia commodity stocks and metal related stocks and hospitality stocks, because of COVID restrictions being withdrawn, could significantly see improvements in the coming weeks, months, quarters, and indeed many years, who knows, right? So this could be a cyclical upturn that we are looking for Australian commodity specific stocks. So this is fascinating, right? So China, Hong Kong index, and the Australian index are things to definitely watch out for, right? This is the Shanghai Composite Index, and I'm not sure why it's not marked. All right. Okay, just very quick. There it is, right. So this is the monthly chart of the Shanghai Index, and what's again interesting here is that So do you remember let me just put it up again very quickly. The Hang Seng, right, has been doing this, downtrend. And if I go back to the Hang Seng daily, you will see this more clearly, right? This fall in the Hang Seng after, coming close to its life high. So from 31,000 to 23,000. Now, if I go to the Shanghai, you'll not see the same thing. You're seeing a sideways firm market. So distinctly different impacts on what the Shanghai index is doing versus the Hang Seng index is doing. So this is, again, coming back to my point that you have to have some sense of knowing which factors to give weightage to and which ones to sort of maybe even ignore or say, no, those are not relevant here. So Ukraine, Russia, clearly not really relevant for Shanghai, in the sense the way for Hong Kong, uh, for Shanghai, small dip, came back, but it's been doing, this is just part of a much, much larger 2-year, 3-year sideways trend for Shanghai. This is a very different setup than what we've seen for any of the other charts. So a good long-term sideways sort of consolidation that's been going on with Shanghai index. Okay, let me actually do something else. I'll remove that. And all right, so this is just going to make it a little, so weekly, just to see the longer term picture of this. So if you're looking at the chart right from 2012, please note that. And you can see that for about a year and a half, about 15 months now, we've really not been going anywhere. So if I zoom into that, right, so you have these pieces where it goes sideways and cracks and come up and it's done a consolidation. Now, if you look at it within this bigger picture series, this is what that consolidation is. All right. And the question is, what does the market do next from here, right? This is consolidating. Everything which has happened in the last 1.5 years is within this pattern of the Shanghai market. Question is whether it'll break out of 3,700 or it'll come back to 3,300 and take support. So I would put, alerts, and I would watch for these levels. And if it comes to 3,300, watch carefully, maybe go long, most probably go long. If it breaks, then of course you short. And if it breaks 3,700, there's nice swing trades available here between 3.3 and 3.7. But if 3.7 breaks, right, then we could see this going quite significantly up about 10-15%. So SSE, Shanghai, through how you get in, the various ways. If you have an Hong Kong based account, if you have a US based account, or if you have a Europe based account, there are various ways to trade this setup and opportunity. So looks like, I would say, and China, by the way, again, could benefit indirectly from any sanctions that are applied to Russia. Of course, financial sanctions have already been applied, but going forward, China could significantly benefit through a sort of routing of Russian trade through China. And if that routing happens, as many people expect, that there will be some extent, some cooperation between Russia and China. It's not going to be blatant and very obvious, because then China perhaps does not want to complicate its life too much by inviting, further issues. But China is vastly stronger than Russia is, right? So China could get away with a lot more that Russia perhaps can't. For example, they kicked Russia, the Russian central bank, out of the SWIFT banking system, which is huge, right? Now, doing something similar for China is just unthinkable. If they do that, then the way China will retaliate and clamp down and all that, West is probably going to get hit even more than they already are. So they won't even dare do that with China, in my view, right? So that allows China this buffer, the strength to say, to tell China to help Russia, and Russia helps China, and say, okay, fine, you buy things from us and supply to the rest of the world. So China could do well in some ways, would benefit. I think geopolitically and economically, China is one of the direct beneficiaries, along with, like I already mentioned, Australia, of the conflict that is going on right now. So if you're looking at China, then look at the SSE exchange traded ETF, just stock ETF, and just put some money into it if you accept this thesis. Technically, if you especially look at the monthly chart, and if you're a much longer term investor, this technically is looking like a good setup, right? If you have at least a 5-year patient view, then I would say investing in China is perhaps a good idea, right? It's probably a good idea, right? And definitely are opportunities. Higher tops, higher bottoms. This resistance was taken out. It's cannot taken out. It's sort of pivoting around that and is deciding what it wants to do, right? And once it does that, I think maybe this quarter, next quarter, with COVID receding, the supply chain problems, global supply chain problems getting themselves sorted out, the trade level could go back. Of course, there's a whole different sensitivity to Chinese trade now globally, but given that really there's no option, there are no alternatives to China-made goods, I think China's economy and individual companies could see some bumper profits, at least over the next few to many quarters. So anybody playing into that thesis should look. And I think I would stick my neck out and say from, about 3488, say 3500, the index could easily do, 4,000 and who knows, 4,500 from here. So if we're talking about a 10 to 20% move upside on the Shanghai Composite in the next 1 to 3 years. And that's, when it comes to an individual index, that is significant and huge. All right. So now looking at India, Nifty, and coming home in a sense. This is the Indian Nifty index, the stock equity index. And if we start again from the monthly, right from the top, so you can see that we've done really well. 2008 crash, COVID crash here, monthly looks all minor blips and all that, right? That's why people make a case for long-term investing. Just stay, don't worry about these things. And you see this on Twitter a lot. I mean, the COVID has really massively multiplied individual participation in equity markets globally. The amount of new trading accounts, demat accounts, and day trading, this, that, YouTube channels in every conceivable language, good ones, rotten ones, mostly rotten ones, is just phenomenal, right? It's just been a revelation to watch this shift that has happened in the last 2 years within, specifically with the market participation issue globally, but close at hand, it's just remarkable. Now, with that, again, reminding everyone that we are looking at a monthly chart. The monthly chart in the index is grossly overbought and is definitely nowhere near sensible or safe levels for investing, right? So this is one big concern as far as the monthly chart is concerned. It doesn't look like much of a fall. It looks like a nice rally. Actually, looks even more like a flag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 month flag, and then who knows? We zoom off to 22,000 on the Nifty. Can't rule that out. Okay, cannot rule that out. But at this point, with things like crude oil hitting $100 a barrel, India imports so much crude. With all these global uncertainties, with pressures on which side to what, I think things are getting little sticky. right? So there is this heaviness on the top, which I would be quite wary of, and I would be very, very, for long-term investors, I'm not so sure that this is the best time to enter, right? If the market does cool off, another 10, 15, 20%, then probably definitely long-term investors should enter um, quite quite boldly and see and get much better levels and much better valuations, etc. So, oh yeah, talking about the market reviews, we will also do a valuation based review, looking at various fundamental aspects, fundamental ratios for the indices specifically, and depending on what the level of interest is, maybe we'll do for individual stocks also. So on the weekly chart, we do already have lower tops, lower bottoms type short-term trend, right? Definitely not a long-term trend, not yet at least. Okay. Yeah. So things are beginning to fall faster, right? Again, for the Elliott wave folks in us, this is like what I discussed already with the S&P. Right? This could be a 1, this could be a 2, and this could be just be a 1 of, or a 1 of a 3, which is happening. And if that is the case, then we have a long way to go before this downtrend and the Elliott wave pans out, right? In the short term, we have definitely done well in terms of taking support at 200-day moving average, breaking down and coming back. And yesterday, exponential moving average just tweaked our head above. Yesterday was quite a remarkable recovery day. We gapped down, right? There's this big, not a very big gap now, but gap there. And then we gapped down, moved down all the way. Fascinating trend line, by the way, this one, right? Let me make it a different color for discussion purposes. What color? Mauve. Okay, right? Fascinating trend line simply because I don't like it. White, right? Because just see how the market reacted on that. That was the top. Here's another top. Here's another one. Really good fit. Took support on that intraday on this day, which is the 25th of Jan, right? And then remember, Russia had still not happened, right? So we had a fall already going on, and then moved up, consolidated for some time, again cracked, went through it, came back, and yesterday, which is on 28th Feb, it took support exactly on that line intraday and then rose quite a big rise, as you see, from a low of 16,356, it went to 16,816. So almost 500 points recovery intraday on the Nifty index, which is massive. And right now, toying around with the 200-day moving average and really wondering what the market wants to do with it, right? One big market event in a few months, years, it will be a non-event, will be the LIC IPO. Actually, I won't say it's a non-event. A lot of different views on that. Should you apply? Should you not apply? A lot of people. So the government denounced that they will be allowing a 20% FDI, foreign direct investment, into the IPO before the IPO. Well, I don't know how to read that. You can spin it both ways. You can say, okay, fine, there's that much FDI interest, but FDI of $2 billion is really not a lot of money nowadays for large money managers who are managing $1 trillion. It could be less than 0.1% or 0.2% or something. Hey, okay, fine, we'll give it a chance and just see how that goes. Take, for example, how British Petroleum has decided to pull out of Rosneft, which is Russia's ONGC, oil and gas major. And they're just going to perhaps write off several $1 billion as a loss, because they don't want to be a part of the Russian ecosystem and economic thing at all. And if that is the case, and if companies like that are willing to write off billions, many billions. The IPO is a very small amount of money here that we are talking about, and they are perhaps willing to just take the risks in order to not miss the boat. It's like, the fear of missing out. So we don't want to miss the opportunity, get in. On the other hand, we could spin it as saying, the government is not so sure anymore about the subscriptions in the IPO, and therefore maybe they just decided to get some money in before, and then therefore make less amount, that much less, 20% less available to the Indian public and Indian institutions. Don't know, right? But if we look at the recent IPOs in the last several months, the mega ones, they've all, whether they've done badly or bombed is subjective description, but they've all gone way below the IPO listing price, IPO issue price, and the IPO listing price, and some of them just been disasters, right? So we'll see how LIC really pans out. One thing to note for the LIC, Life Insurance Corporation of India, that is for those who are perhaps foreign to India, India's largest life insurer, government owned, government managed for multiple decades. One of the things that they've said is shareholder returns will be paid partly by reducing the returns paid out to the policyholders, right? Now, the way the profits are going to be shared, I don't know why. Why? Of course, economic justification. In a free market, anything is possible. But you've built this multi-million, almost maybe a 500,000 client base over multiple decades who've been putting their trust and faith in LIC and expecting returns from LIC. And now you're actually taking their money, their returns, and saying part of this will be given to pay for, so if LIC was, let's say, making $100 million, 100 crores, or $1,000 million, whatever profit, most of that was going back to the policyholders. Now, some of it will not go to the policyholders. It will go to the shareholders. Fine. There is a case for giving it to the shareholders, but somehow, does not really ring fair completely, in the sense that you build this business, it's their money. In a sense, it's a cooperative. Of course, unfortunately or fortunately, the way the world works, the owners make the decisions, but it's really taking money out of the life insurance policyholders' pockets, however little, maybe 2%, maybe 20%, and saying this is going to now go to the shareholders. So all the policyholders will be affected for the benefit of the few shareholders who actually finally get those shares. And again, those will be the rich institutions and the mega corporations and all that. So just putting it out there to, just out there. That's all. Not that it's going to make a difference. Just to think about how the world works, perhaps. Okay. So coming back to the Nifty index, we have, we are clearly again in a lower top, lower bottom formation, like many of the other global indices. I would not say there is any sign of bottoming out right now. Looks like a lot of strength. And what's been really surprising, if you look at the index right now, is you had this fall, sharp fall. You had this big green engulfing, or not engulfing, but a very strong candle, which was like a, where is that? Yeah, a big move, and then it cracked again here. You had a big green candle, which was like almost a 3% move up again. And you have these things, and you have these big up moves, which just don't sustain. And they look like, they make you feel like, okay, things are, see, what I'm trying to say is this sort of a massive green Marubozu type candle, and these small ones here are fundamentally different in the way that one senses or perceives the market to be. This could be construed as a sign of weakness. This definitely is a sign of, constitutes a sign of weakness in the sense it's going up, but not really going up, with strength. But when you get strong green candle like this, the general traditional thinking is this is strength. This is the bulls are back. And since human beings now tend to have shorter and shorter memories, look at this, you want to wipe out the bigger picture, the falls, and say, oh, the worst is over. And we saw that yesterday and perhaps a little day before yesterday also. But if you look at the larger picture, whether it's the weekly and even the monthly, the top heaviness, in the weekly, the downtrend, lower tops, lower bottoms, and in the daily, there seems to be a sort of conflict, but really we are perhaps most likely in longer term downtrend and some sort of cooling off, perhaps maybe till 16,000, 15,000 also on the Indian markets in the next few weeks. Okay, this is not going to happen in a day or two. It's not a 1 day, 2 day phenomenon in a day or two. It'll be maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months. Perhaps this year will be a more of a sideways consolidating year rather than an uptrend year that has been there for the last 2 years. So we've got to adjust our expectations and adjust to the realities, because the last 2 years has been phenomenal for a lot of new investors, new traders. You just bought any stock, you made money. But this year is probably been quite this move in the last one or two weeks especially, and 1 or 2 months, has been quite painful for many of the new investors and traders into the Indian markets. And so I'm sure it is globally. And I think one has to adjust for what to expect in the next many months and 1 year ahead, at least. Because the expectation is that things are great in the last 2 years, market-wise. I'm not talking about COVID-wise, I'm talking about market-wise. And especially any of us who perhaps missed the boat and or are new joinees are now operating with that 2-year back expectation as to how the future will be. And I really doubt that's not what the charts are indicating at all, that the future is going to be as rosy as has the last 2 years been. So again, levels to watch out for on the Nifty, if it does go back up, 17,300 to 17,500 would, I think, be very important resistance zones. At the bottom, 16,170 would be something, 16,200 would be something to really, really watch out. If that breaks, then we really have no clear support till, I would say, somewhere here, which is at 15,900. So let me mark that. So where is clear support? I would say clear support is in this zone at around 15,900. So if you are a longer term investor, I would say, wait for that level at least before you enter and see whether that's the best for you, right? I expect that level to be reached. So that's 15,000, say 16,000, right? So we are talking about visibility. 1 second. I don't get it when I want it. Okay, I wanted to make that line thick. All right, I'll do that later. Okay. And where are we right now? We are at 16,700. We're talking about an 800 point, fall that is quite possible. So wait for that patiently, and then perhaps look for opportunities to get in. So to wrap up, the Ukraine-Russia thing is not over. We are today in a holiday in India, 1st of March on a Tuesday, because Mahashivratri. Tomorrow we'll open. The global markets, like I mentioned, are definitely looking weak, except for Hang Seng, Shanghai, and perhaps Australia, right? If you're a global investor, these are the places to look at this point. Otherwise, I would be conservative, risk off, more into cash, and look at lower levels to enter long, right? So with that, let me end the session for today. It's been an hour plus. I will have a session very soon on the rest of the other on other asset classes which have not been covered, right? And we will look at commodities, crypto, and forex in forthcoming sessions. And yeah, for those who are familiar with my old format, just to let everybody know, yes, I will will do India-specific equity market reviews, starting with a sector review at some time, and then individual stock reviews. In case you're interested, we'll revive a communication platform. Maybe, I'm not sure. Perhaps Discord. I think that's another discovery that I made. So I'm too old school for this high-fangled new tech. So perhaps start a Discord channel, a server rather. That's the term, and Telegram. So again, if anybody is wanting to stay connected, keep getting updates, etc., just reach out, message me on WhatsApp. Sorry, or not on WhatsApp. Signal is my preferred thing, or on Telegram on that number on your screen, and you will get updates about forthcoming activities. And like I said, if you are person doing crypto especially, and or a coder who's looking to, whether you're a novice coder or very competent coder, I would like to have a discussion and engage, just to see where we can take this forward. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for listening, and looking forward to hearing from you guys. And I do look forward to your feedback and criticisms. And if there's any specific things that you want discussed, anything about that we have data on the markets, I would love to do that. So thank you very much. Have a good time. Take care of yourself. 2022 is going to be probably a volatile year as far as the market is concerned. So be safe, be conservative, keep your head high. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye.